everyone, my name is Zach REDRUP, this is the It's Not a Phase podcast, and on this episode I'm joined by vocalist Rich Lardner and drummer Isaac Barton of the band Downpour. We talk about their brand new debut album, Where There Is Life, There Is Hope, how the band formed, how the landscape of social media has changed for bands over the past few years, their original plan to put out multiple EPs instead of an album, and loads more. But quickly, just before we get into all of that, if you do enjoy the podcast, then I would really appreciate it if you could take a few seconds of your time right now to support it. You can hit subscribe or follow wherever you're checking this out, and that way you also don't miss out on any future episodes. You can leave a review or a comment. You can follow the podcast on social media, and there's also a Patreon and a web store if you did want to go one step further. To make it super simple and easy, I've shoved links to everything that I've just mentioned in the description of this episode, or you can head to itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now, with all that out of the way, here's my chat with Rich and Isaac of Downpour. What's up everybody, thank you for joining me on this episode of the It's Not a Phase podcast, where I'm joined by Rich and Isaac from the band Downpour. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all good dudes, all good. Yeah, I guess let's go in, with the big news for you guys. Debut album just dropped. Where There Is Life, There Is Hope. Yeah, it's been out for a few days now. How are you feeling about finally having this, this collection of songs out there in the world for people to listen to?
It's sort of been like a long time coming. So we actually recorded around 2/3 of it initially, and we were going to do a couple of EPs, and then we just kind of decided, let's go for a full length. So the sort of back quarter of last year was just sort of writing some more tracks to obviously complete the album. And then it's just been a case of we sort of really based everything around the release show, because we knew we wanted to do something to celebrate the release itself as a show. And it basically came down to that was the weekend we could get the venue we wanted. And then the release was all kind of built around the show, rather than the show around the release, which is, I guess, the traditional way of doing it.
Yeah. So were you like sitting on this album for long then? Because I know you had the Hope EP last year, so that's obviously all those tracks are also on the record here. So, how much of the album was complete by that point? Was it just what was ready at the time, or?
I'm going to say there was probably 8-9 tracks, almost there.
Yeah. Some of the songs had like been written years ago. So Jesse does most of like the instrumentals and writing, and obviously Rich does all the vocals and lyrics. But Jesse had written a couple of the songs like maybe like 6-7 years ago, and they're just like bits of songs that got pieced together, and we worked and refined them.
Wow, okay, so some of the songs there, at least parts of the songs anyway, predate even the band itself, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Jesse's a writing machine. He's always writing stuff, and he's got just like crazy amounts of Logic projects of just like bits and pieces and stuff. So we just pull him from that.
Fair enough. I guess you've got plenty of stuff in the chamber then. Like if you need to put some more stuff out soon or anything like that.
Yeah, we got some bits.
Yeah.
And how have the fans been reacting to it? 'Cause, once you put out a debut album, I guess like a lot of eyes then come on to you that maybe didn't have their eyes on you, beforehand.
It's a weird one because I'm the only one really in the band that's not from Bristol or close by. And the guys said, they were expecting a lot of sort of people they knew at the show, but there was a lot of people that they didn't know. There was a couple of people traveled up from London, and they said, we heard the one of the tracks on a Spotify playlist, and it is really since it's been out, we've noticed the streams have been going up. We've been getting more follows and messages and all the rest of it. So it has been really great to see. I think it's just what's to sort of be expected, obviously after the back of releasing something.
Yeah, and you mentioned the the release show, and you had a few shows like kind of leading up to that as well earlier this month. How did they all go? What were they like?
Yeah, they were really good. Yeah, we did Manchester, Worcester, and London, and it was great to play London again. We played in January, and we know it's a place. Last year we were really trying to sort of get our foot in there, and we just didn't get the opportunity. And this year, we're only in March, and we've already played twice, and They were great shows, both really busy. And there was people from the first show that travelled to see us again. And what was interesting is, obviously London's quite a broad place. We played in two completely different parts of London. And as I say, there was a handful of people that came to see us in January that then also traveled down to see us in March, which was like really, really, really cool. And then it was the first time in January. There was a couple of people flew over from
Oh,
France.
really? Wow.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
we just thought they were just there, and they sort of came up to us and said, we've got a flight earlier today to specifically see you guys play, and that was crazy because we've never really had anything like that because we're such a new band.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, traveling from a completely different country just see you guys live, I guess. And
Yeah.
not only that, like you say, you had a few people go to one show and then come to the other one. So, I mean, you must have done something right for them to come back.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think speaking sort of Europe wise, it is a completely different culture. I think in the UK we like things to be on our doorstep. Um, you know, don't necessarily like making an hour, 2 hour trip to a show. But in Europe, that's quite normal for people to travel an hour or so to get to a show.
Yeah, yeah. In the UK, it's like if it's not on my doorstep, then
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
can't be
Yeah,
bothered, which
yeah,
is a bit shitty. But that's
yeah.
that's the way it is, isn't it? Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess like kind of leading on from that, like you are a brand new band. This is obviously the debut album. So I guess there's people who have just checked out the album or are about to check out the album or listen to this who maybe don't know quite who you are and stuff like that. So would you mind kind of just explaining when and how the band kind of formed, how it came to be?
Do you want to take this, Isaac, or?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, so myself, I might play the drums in the band. Mitch, the bassist, and Jesse, the guitarist, and he does the clean vocals as well. We were all previously in a band called We Struck Gold. Like years ago, I left probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And when I left, Mitch joined. So I didn't really know Mitch until we kind of did Downpour. And obviously Rich has had like previous experience being in Odessa and Lock and Key. Um, and Jesse kind of like had reached out and like through mutual acquaintances. Who is it that got you guys in touch, Rich? I
It
can't
was
remember who
it
it
was
was.
Miroslav. So
Yeah.
after my old band kind of disbanded, I was in touch with Miroslav because he's the guy that my last band recorded with, and I just sort of said like, I really want to sort of get my teeth into something, and he sort of knows the kind of stuff that I like doing and what I listen to. And it was a couple of months later, he sort of sent me this like demo on WhatsApp as like an audio thing, and I was
Right.
like, "This is sick! Like, who's this?" And then he sort of, gave me the backstory of, We Struck Gold had booked in with him, starting a new band and they need a vocalist. And, he's basically like the inroads to, the whole sort of inception of Downpour, really.
Yeah. And we'd like when I originally joined Downpour, I actually joined as a second guitarist before
Oh,
even
okay.
playing the drums. And then like after a few practices, like I'm okay at the guitar, but like drums is just like where I feel at home and I feel like
Right.
I kind of step into my own on it. So ended up playing drums in the band. Um, and it kind of just like shot off from there, really, like meeting up and practicing every like month or so, like throwing back and forward like song ideas and then learning them, coming together because we're all very spread out. So myself, I'm like down in Devon, and then you got Jesse and Mitch who are like in the Bristol area, and then Rich who's in Birmingham. So like organizing practices, like we were very like, quite firm on like the time that we have together. We make the most out of it. So we just learn the songs and practice them at home, and then get together and hopefully we
Yeah.
can play through a song.
Yeah, yeah. So how did that happen then? Have you initially went in as the guitarist? Was there already like a drummer in place or just there wasn't?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was a guy that was playing with him, and it just didn't work out with him, unfortunately. And then it was kind of like the opportune timing of like, I was like, well, I'd rather play drums anyway. Like, I kind of miss playing drums in a heavier
Yeah.
band. Like, I play drums a lot anyway. I do as like kind of like a side hustle. I play in like a covers band and do weddings and stuff. But I wasn't really scratching the itch of playing heavy music.
Yeah.
And it was just great to have the opportunity to get back and do it again.
Yeah. So I guess when the the stool behind the kit was empty, you just jumped right on.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you know, you've said there like obviously you both got experience in previous like heavier bands and stuff like that. Um, and, you know, I guess the way that kind of like the scene has changed over the years and the way like bands are promoted over the years, you know, over the years, social media has become more and more and more of like a prominent thing that bands have to do to kind of, you know, rise through the ranks,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
Um, how do you kind of feel like from being inside a band, like in a band at the moment and trying to, you know, push your way through, like how do you feel it's changed since your earlier years in bands?
I mean, to put it into perspective, the first bands that I was sort of playing in, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook. It was all MySpace.
Yeah.
That's how things were advertised. It was MySpace and Tumblr. You know, there was no paid ads, there was no reels. And even in the space of, you know, 3, 4 years since I was last in a band, um, even so, you know, Facebook was more prominent than Instagram, whereas it's now like the complete opposite way around. And there's so much pressure on, you know, playlisting, whereas, you know, 4 or 5 years ago it was all about, you know, physical print, so, you know, Kerrang reviews, etc. Whereas the table is like completely 180'd.
Yeah, yeah, and you got things like TikTok as well now, which
Yeah.
wasn't a thing then. And I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think you've caved in to do any like viral dances or stuff yet, but
No,
I guess
no,
there's
no.
time.
Yeah.
Nah, we'll get Rich on that. He'll do it
Yeah,
eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And what did you kind of, I guess, take from your time in those bands, and you know, learn from them? You know, like I guess like learn from the pitfalls and stuff that you know you inevitably get when you are in bands, and kind of like learning the scene. Like, is there anything you took from those bands and brought into this one to kind of make sure you kind of got like an extra footing from right out of the gate?
To be honest, I mean, I think for me, from where I sort of came from, like I was in a couple of bands before, and as one sort of finished, the other one started, and so that kind of had a bit of momentum from the prior one. But I
Right.
think because there was such a large gap, like this really has just been kind of slug it from the bottom. And to be honest, it's been really refreshing. And I think especially following our show that we did on Sunday in Bristol, that sold out, it's been like super humbling because we know that it's been sort of organic the way in which that traction has been created.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I guess that's like the benefit of like a clean slate, isn't it? Like, you always get those. If you come from like a really prominent, like prolific band, it's always like, oh,
Yeah,
this person was in this band, and then everyone
yeah,
expects
yeah,
you to sound exactly like the band you've just come from.
yeah,
And if you don't sound exactly like that, then you get all the people just like kicking off that are just like gatekeepers or whatever.
Mm,
yeah, yeah. Of course.
Yeah, and you get that like all over, like in every kind of genre, I think.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, returning to the album, can you talk to me a bit about the title that you went with for the record? Like, why that? How do you think that kind of encapsulates the collection of songs that are on there?
Um, we wanted something that tied the EP to it, and I know that we spent quite a long time deciding on a title. It probably went back and forth for a couple of weeks, I'd
We
say.
actually we actually had the album title, I think, before the EP title because we were going to do two EPs and one called Hope and Life. And then I think we were like talking about releasing them both together as like a joint EP and then having it called Where There Is Life, There Is Hope. So it kind of like similar to what we've got now, but it came off of it was like a Latin like proverb.
Right.
I'm not going to say what the translation is because I'll absolutely butcher it.
Go on, give it
But
a go.
no, no, I'm not even going to try. But it translated to "Where there is life, there is hope."
Right.
And I think it like encapsulated like a lot of the messages behind like Rich's lyrics. Um, and like we're all very positive people, and we like positive music, but we also like the heavier side of things. So trying to incorporate those like even just down to things like the album artwork, yeah, was really important.
Yeah, because I guess the artwork does kind of tie into it, doesn't it? Because you know, from listening to it, it seems like one of the kind of stronger themes throughout the record is kind of like death and loss and grief. And then obviously you've got kind of death on the front cover of the album artwork as well. So I guess that just ties it all together.
Mm, yeah,
Isaac
definitely.
actually illustrated the cover for the album.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I tend to do like a lot of like all of our merch and stuff. Like I do. Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy doing art like just as a bit of a side hustle kind of thing. Mainly just for the band, but yeah, I just really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, it saves you money as well. Like instead of like
Yeah,
someone else.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's probably more of it. Like that money can be spent elsewhere if we're not investing it in that. And if
Yeah.
if it, like I think something we've done really well as a band is like pulling on everyone's skills. Like where
Yeah.
Jesse does a lot of the songwriting, everybody kind of like picks up on their skills and their strengths, and we utilize those within the bands to like just kind of like help us, I guess, like not spend not spend where we don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, especially nowadays, with like just general life is more expensive nowadays, and
Yeah,
being in a band is not cheap either, and touring in a band
no,
and stuff. So if anywhere
no,
you can kind of like save money, but not at the expense of art, right? Like obviously that
yeah,
they're like it's a great artwork. It's not like you're doing like stick figures just to kind
yeah,
of like save a few quid,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So did you do the EP artwork as well then?
No, I didn't do
All
the EP
right.
artwork. No, no, I didn't. But like we kind of like drew inspiration from it, like kind of stylistically, like the kind of painting style. The color scheme is quite similar.
Mhm.
But I did, I changed it a little bit. So I think there's kind of like, it's quite like fairly similar, but same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah, there's like a similar thread going through it. Like, and like you say, it's kind of got like similar like color schemes and hues and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
yeah, you can definitely
yeah,
kind of see the connection
yeah,
with the
yeah.
two of them. Yeah. Um, so yeah, so you're talking about like that EP as well. So you said, was it just the EP that was recorded then? And you didn't, I think you said earlier you had like 9 songs recorded at the time of the EP. Like what
Yeah.
was the kind of like the original strategy, and at what point was it like, okay, let's just kind of do an album and we'll just put these songs on there and kind of put them in like a different track listing sequence, I guess, with the remaining songs that you made.
I think Jesse was really the catalyst behind that decision. Because of Jesse being the prominent songwriter, it was really all on him, and he just sort of came out of it. He's like, "We're doing an album," and that was sort of it is what it is, and that's sort of what we work towards.
Right. Okay. Okay. And what made you kind of go for the tracks that you did with the EP? Is it just because they were ready at the time? Is that what it was?
I think we tried to get a balance, like keeping in mind that we were going to do 2 EPs and we had already
Oh yeah,
recorded
yeah, yeah.
8 or 9 tracks. And so we wanted to make sure there was a fair balance so that, we didn't put all the sort of lighter songs on the first EP and give a poor representation of what Downpour is as a whole. And so we tried to have a good balance between the sort of melodic singy songs and also the heavier bits.
Yeah.
So just a case of we felt like these were a good first representation of the band, and then the others were going to be for a second EP, which obviously then turned into the album.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like it's a first impression, isn't it? Like you kind of want to, you don't want to like represent yourself right at the start of like, here's all the heavy tracks, and then when people get to the album,
Yeah,
like it's like, oh wait, it's not like what is this? Like why have we kind of pivoted this way?
yeah,
Um,
exactly, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I think one of the EP tracks, it's the opening track, Dissonant, but you've
yeah,
renamed that to Life on the album. Is that right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The only
Yeah,
reason
that's kind of coincide with the
yeah,
title of it.
yeah, the only reason I kind of like asked that is because I think on the Spotify version it's still called Dissonant, but I think then on the Bandcamp version it's still called Life or something like that. But I was just trying to
Yeah,
like,
I think there was actually there was like a weird issue with it. That's not
Yeah.
actually how it was meant to be. There was an issue
right,
when Mitch was uploading it via like the distribution, and there was something I can't actually remember the specifics of it, but it automatically changed the name to Dissonant. So
right,
yeah, we want to try and get it to change it, but we might just have
yeah,
to re-upload it at some point with like the correct name.
yeah. It must be like kind of like the ID tags or something like that. It's kind of like
I think
recognizing like it's a
Yeah.
similar
I think that's what
song.
Mitch was saying it was. Yeah, it's a bit annoying, but it's okay.
Yeah, technical issues. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and then like kind of like looking forward, I know you've got is it Island Fest in Northampton later in the month?
It was meant to be Sunday, but
Right.
the festival was actually cancelled the entire thing.
Oh, really? Oh no.
Yeah, it sort of caught us by surprise, but we're actually getting together still on Sunday, and we're going to start working on some new material.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like make
Yeah,
the
we
best of the time.
exactly all had the day booked off. We thought we may
Yeah.
as well make the
So
most of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So what's kind of like new music kind of looking like? Like what stage are we at? Like
Very,
Um,
very early, really.
yes, very, very, very early. Like
Yeah.
Jesse's kind of sent, you know, the odd sort of loop of a riff or whatever, or like it's still very stripped back. So the way in which Jesse writes, he'll kind of start with your sort of bare basics, and then he'll build on that, um, and it sort of evolves from that point. But it's still very raw. But I mean, we're looking forward to it because I think it will be the first time in a while where we've actually all got in a room and sort of tried to write together.
yeah.
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 I think that's kind of what Jesse wanted to do is that we just get together and like start from nothing and try and make something from nothing. Just a different process to, I guess, to kind of like maybe like not shake habits, but like obviously Jesse, when he's at home on his own, he's like in getting inspiration from himself or like maybe what he's been listening to. But whereas if we're all together, like Rich writes as well, like he plays guitar, has played guitar in other bands and stuff. So we're gonna all get together and I guess just try and work on something together from scratch.
Right. Right. Do you feel like because obviously now that the album's out and people have heard it and stuff and you've seen reactions and all that kind of stuff, do you feel like the way that fans react maybe to certain songs or certain parts of songs kind of informs yourselves in terms of what you want to write? Like, I don't know if fans really like this kind of melodic chorus or they kind of really like this breakdown. Do you kind of think, oh, let's kind of hone in on that a little bit, maybe on a future song?
Definitely. I can't recall the guy's name, but there was a guy that did a live stream and he listened to the entirety of our album and then he sort of dissected it and sort of picked it apart. And like he mentioned something about like we have a lot of sort of choruses where, the chorus is like a sort of big melodic singy kind of section. But he's sort of said, it would be cool to hear switch it up and like have like a singy verse and then like a sort of screamy chorus kind of thing. So for me, like that was quite interesting because that's not necessarily something I would have thought. Oh, maybe that could be cool to try.
Yeah, yeah. Were there any particular bands or anything that was, inspiring you, particularly on this record, either of you? I think when I've looked at a couple of reviews, I think the main comparison a lot of people are making is like the Ghost Inside or Counterparts.
Yeah,
Uh, don't know if that was like an influence here.
We get
Yeah,
it quite a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, I don't like Jesse doesn't like all those bands. I think like Stick to Your Guns is maybe one that Jesse listens to out of all of them. The others he's like I think he likes, but I wouldn't say that he pulls influence from them. Like obviously speaking on his behalf, like a lot of the stuff he listens to is like he loves like his classic hardcore. He loves his like emo. Like band like Misery Signals is like one of his favorite bands, and we've had that
right.
comparison before as well, which is really
yeah.
cool to hear.
Yeah, yeah. And are there any kind of new bands kind of coming up at the same time as you that you guys are really like digging that people should check out as well?
Do you want it or do you want me?
Go for it, man. Yeah, yeah. You can think of anything.
So
I'm definitely thinking.
Chaos Reigns. We've done a few shows with those guys recently. They're amazing live. They've got a big catalog of tracks out there. In terms of like my general everyday listening, not necessarily new, but like I listen to a lot of like modern baseball and more kind of emo-y sort of bands.
Right.
Like Saturdays at Your Place. They played Make a Scene last year, the sort of day before we did. I'm really into them. Um, and it's quite interesting like to listen to that and then be able to sort of home in on the sort of heavy stuff that we do.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Isaac?
Um, yeah, I like similar to like Jesse. Like a lot of the stuff that I listen to is like hardcore. But I love melody. I love songs with melody and like with emo feeling and stuff that makes you feel something. So bands like Stick to Your Guns that like purvey that really well. Like they're like one of my favorite bands. So it's probably quite easy to hear the influence in our music. And I know Rich loves Stick to Your Guns
Oh,
as well.
mate. Big
Like
fan.
huge influence for us. I know
Yeah.
Jesse's like one of your biggest influences vocally as well, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh, huge. Yeah.
Yeah, so bands like that, and like I think seeing how they've changed their sound over the years as well from like the albums that they originally brought out is really interesting to hear how they've, I guess, like gone down a little bit more of a melodic route. But even with the latest album, they've kind of gone back to like their heavier hardcore influences.
Yeah.
And I think we did that a little bit with the album when we had the original like nine or whatever songs it was. We wanted to write three more, and I when Jesse was writing it, he was like, "I want something a bit more heavier, so like something when we play live, people can move to and like get a bit more involved with." So I think like going forward, like writing music, figuring out how we'll balance that, like whether do we like go a bit more heavy, do we like I guess pull more on like the melody side of things and like big anthemic choruses that people sing along to, because I think one thing I noticed like live is those are the moments I think people like react a lot more to,
Mm.
like big moments that they can sing along to like in Miles Apart. But even like things like the pre-chorus and Suffocated, like people get really excited for that and it's very visible when you're playing it live. So I think trying to pull from that and maybe working on those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, just think about like the live moment, like in what part of this song can like the crowd kind of get involved? Where can we kind of
Yeah,
inject that into the song?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that one of the newer songs that we wrote, "The Death of Everything," is like one of our favorites to play live now.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, 'cause it's actually quite a bit different to the other stuff that we write. Like a lot of the other stuff is like from the drums as well, is like very much like D beat, like punk beats, super fast. Whereas there's a bit more like groove and a slower pace to that, and that creates a whole different kind of feel for like being a part of a crowd and wanting to move to it, but also us on stage rather than just being flat out, like you can actually like sit in the moment a little bit and like feel it a bit
Yeah.
more. And I'd love to do more of that. um like a lot of my drumming influence comes from like a lot of gospel playing, like growing up playing
Right.
in church and things like that. So those drummers, I'd love to be able to incorporate it into some of the stuff that we're going to be writing, which is really hard if you're playing 200 BPM.
Mm.
So so playing something a bit slower, something a bit more riffy would be like kind of the avenue I'd like to explore and go down.
Yeah. Give you a chance to kind of like chill out for a moment after
Yeah.
Mate, I'm all
going
about
ham.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm all about that.
Well, if you're both big Stick to Your Guns fans, what is your favorite Stick to Your Guns album?
Diamond, 100%. Diamond or the Hope Division.
Yeah, that's literally I think Hope Division like wins it a little bit for me, just because it's the first album that I listened to by them, and it like I've just been hooked since then. But yeah, I think Hope Division.
Yeah, that's fair. I would have gone with Diamond, but yeah, Hope Division's also
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
both
When
amazing
Sun Never
albums.
Sleeps and all that, it's just amazing. There's just so much energy in the riffs.
yeah,
Yeah, the
definitely.
Better Ash Than Dust EP is like
Oh
probably
my
up there for
God.
me as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, yeah. So you mentioned you got some like kind of new music cooking, like early stages. What other plans are in place for 2025 so far that you can talk about?
Do you want to take it, Isaac?
What can we talk about?
Yeah. We've we're in sort of a bit of a sort of transitional stage at the moment. So sort of from the point we started playing, which was just over 12 months ago from when we actually launched, everything we've done up to this point has been completely independent. Like anything you've seen online has been all us, like all the content, it's all us. It was a few weeks ago, pushing a month ago. We've actually signed with a booking agency. We had a long chat with the guy, and it was very positive. It's a great organisation to be associated with. So we're going to be announcing that in due course.
Hmm.
Really, I think everything's going to build around that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It was funny, like how it that came about. Like it's going back a little bit, but we were like at a period like figuring out where we want to go with the band and like what's going to take us to the next step and how do we grow things. And we were like, oh, we need a manager. And we had a call with someone who was like amazing. It was great chatting with him, who's a manager and manages other bands. And we like she like actually helped us realize that I was like, we're actually kind of like managing ourselves already and doing a lot of it. So we were like, oh, so what do we need then? She was like, you need a booking agent. We were like, yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah.
But yeah, just working on that's been really good. I want to shout out Mitch as well, because something that we get commented on a lot when we're like playing with other bands and stuff is like things like our socials and our promotional material. And Mitch, like, he takes the reins with like basically all of our social content and like programming it and like creating like the meta ads and things like that. And he's like just learned it all from scratch.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, with a little help from our boy Damien Keys. If anybody knows who he is, he knows what he's talking about with things like that. But yeah, Mitch has really killed it with that, and it's helped our growth like a lot and reach a lot of people that
Yeah,
we probably wouldn't have been
big
able to
time.
anyway.
Yeah.
Which goes back to what you were saying earlier, like kind of pulling in on each other's strengths into the
That's it.
band, like you saying with your artwork and stuff like that. So yeah, why not? Like if you can do it, do it.
That's it, man. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, guys, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Any final words before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening?
I'm blank.
Yeah, well, just like if you've not checked us out, then obviously check out our new album. And if you have listened to it and you've enjoyed it, thank you for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. And obviously, when we get some new shows announced, it'd be great to see people there.
Absolutely. And what about like socials? Where can people kind of follow you and keep an eye on what's going on?
Instagram, we're probably most active.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably the best place to find us. We're obviously on Facebook and things like TikTok, but Instagram is like where we're definitely most active with things like stories and like communicating with our fan base and stuff. So yeah, Downpour Band UK.
Awesome. Well, guys, yeah, thanks again. I'll let you go and hopefully I'll catch you at a show soon.
That's
Amazing.
great. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, you
Take
too.
care.
See you later. And that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in to It's Not a Phase. If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Leave a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Follow the podcast on social media, and maybe even join the Patreon or grab some merch from the store. You can find everything that you need at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again. Hopefully catch you on the next one. And remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.